Thank you, and good morning to all of you. Once again, let me say how nice it is to see those of you who are back from Thanksgiving and some of you who are still here from Thanksgiving but yet to have to travel home. And while I'm on the subject of the holidays, let me be the very first to wish you all a Happy New Year. I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but not as much as you might think. Let me explain. For most of the year, the Western calendar and the Christian year walk pretty much in the same path. But there are a few times when the two calendars are out of sync. Today is one of those days. This is the final Sunday of the Christian year, Christ the King Sunday. That means that next Sunday, which is the first Sunday of Advent, is the Christian New Year. So that makes today New Year's Eve. We celebrate it just a little bit differently in the church. For one thing, the refreshments that the fellowship team is going to be providing will probably be a little bit tamer. And you're all a little bit better behaved than most New Year's Eve revelers. But still, this is a celebration. And I have to say, the church has a lot better music than that should old acquaintance be forgot thing that nobody knows all the words to. And we also have some really good symbolism for Christ the King Sunday, which is also known as Eternity Sunday. The secular symbol of the new year is a little baby, usually with a banner across him that says Happy 2013 or whatever the year is. Christians have a baby too, only it takes us 4 weeks, the 4 weeks of Advent, to prepare for that baby's coming. Come December 31st, that little New Year's baby is going to be an old man, bent over with a white beard, walking with a cane, weakened by the last 364 days. In contrast, the church celebrates the end of the year as Christ the King, because Christ is not a victim of time. Christ is the ruler of time. Christ is the ruler of humanity and of heaven and of earth and of time itself. Jesus was before was, and Jesus will be after will be, has been. The Bible is filled with images of Christ, and that's why I wanted you to hear a variety of voices reading those texts today. Some of them are about Jesus as the promise of time, and some of them are about Jesus as the fulfillment of time. As Christians, there are even Old Testament passages that we read as being about Jesus because we believe that those prophecies were fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. That's why that list of titles from Isaiah 9, Wonderful, Counselor, Everlasting Father, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, that's why that's part of our Christmas tradition, because we believe that Jesus is the Messiah who fulfilled that prophecy. The promise of the Messiah fulfills that prophecy, and that's the history of the past of the church that we remember at Christmas. We also remember the historical Jesus, the Palestinian Jew who lived for 33 years on this earth and was a rabbi and teacher, friend to the poor and to his disciples and to all of those who followed him. The Gospels tell us Jesus' story, and every year we remember Jesus' crucifixion and death and celebrate his resurrection at Easter. This life, teaching, and resurrection is the present history of the church. But today is a celebration of the future. What we can still expect from Jesus. What is still to come. Many of the names and titles of Christ that we had in our songs and hymns today come from the book of the Bible that is the most preoccupied with the future. This is the book of Revelation. Revelation is the vision of a guy named John who was exiled on the Greek island of Patmos. And John goes a little wild with the images. King of kings, Lord of lords, bright morning star, Lord of the nations, all of those come from the book of Revelation. And John opens Revelation with this great scene of the Lord Almighty coming down out of the clouds and proclaiming, I am the Alpha and the Omega, who is, who was, and who is to be. It is a Hollywood moment. It is like the opening sequence of a James Bond movie when we meet the hero in this flurry of special effects. Now, proclaiming yourself as Alpha and Omega might seem pretty tame to us, but that would have been a bold proclamation in the ancient world. I am A to Z. I contain everything that is, that was, and that is to be. I am in control of everything, the Almighty. King, ruler, Lord, Almighty. This is great stuff. These are great images for a triumphant church and a triumphant Christ. The only problem is the church wasn't doing so well in the time of Revelation. And all of those titles, Lord, King, Ruler, Almighty, those had already been taken. Those were already taken by the Roman emperor. And the current Roman emperor, Nero, was a pretty twisted, jealous guy who had a way of torturing and killing people who didn't see things his way. I mean, nasty ways of killing people, like being mauled to death by lions in front of a jeering crowd. So if you didn't sacrifice incense to Caesar, or if you said, Jesus is Lord, instead of Caesar is Lord, you could lose your property, your family, your life. As you can imagine, this was pretty discouraging for the early church. For anyone to proclaim that Jesus is Lord was an incredibly courageous and countercultural thing to say. It was a deeply subversive thing for the government to hear. These are the people to whom John is writing. And to give them courage in the face of persecution, he gives them another image of Christ the King, one that's rooted in their Jewish history, that was proclaimed in Jesus' ministry, and one that speaks to the future of time and eternity. This is the image of the Lamb. Now, the Hebrew people have a long history with the Lamb, going all the way back to the Passover feast, when a lamb was killed and its blood was put on the doorways, allowing the Hebrew people to escape from Egypt and be freed from slavery. In the first chapter of John's Gospel, when John the Baptist sees Jesus coming across the Jordan River, John says, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world," an immediate connection with sacrificial death. After that big opening sequence in Revelation 1, Christ addresses the churches, and then John takes us to this jewel-encrusted throne room. And there in the throne room of God are 4 computer-generated creatures that have eyes all over them, so they don't ever have to sleep or stop worshiping God. And if that isn't weird enough, guess who is right in the middle of the throne room? A lamb, looking as if it had been slain. So in other words, a fluffy little creature covered with blood. That is Christ the King. That is who is worthy to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. I am not making this up. It is right there in Revelation. Crazy, isn't it? How this pathetic little runt of an animal appears right in the midst of this vision of the end of time. This symbol of a willing victim giving its life so that others may live. That incredible power and glory and authority begins with self-sacrificing love. Kind of turns all our fantasies of ruling and power upside down, doesn't it? I'd like you to take out your blue hymnals. We're going to sing in a minute, but I want you to take out your hymnals so that you can see what's on the cover. What emblem is down in the lower right-hand corner? It's the Lamb. The publishers skipped the blood all over it, but the thorns are there to remind us of the trials that the Lamb went through for us. It reminds us of what it might cost us to proclaim that Jesus is Lord. The Lamb is with us not only in our Bibles, but also on our hymnals and in our songs, maybe even in our hearts. Christ is King. Caesar is not. That should give us some comfort when things get rough. Jesus is Lord of now and forever. Happy New Year.